You don't have to be a startup person yourself. You don't even have to be, involved in any sort of business to be able to use these to help your students to explore.
Hello, Jill. Thank you so much for joining us. This is Diondraya with Mindset Milestones, and today we're talking about the future of work, and in particular, how do we prepare students for the future of work? I have a future of work expert in Jill Finlayson. She is the managing director of the Citrus Innovation Hub, and I looked down at my notes to check that because I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. She has a big job and she has lots of jobs. So I'm excited for you to hear about her. So we're going to talk a little bit about the future of work. I have a few questions for Jill, and we're going to get started. But before I do that, Jill, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much. Yes, I work at Citrus, which is the Center for IT Research in the Interest of Society. And we also focus on expanding diversity and gender equity in tech as part of the how in how we do our work. So a little bit about myself. I actually one of my first jobs was in ed tech. I worked at the Learning Company, which did educational software. After that, I actually worked at eBay, and we worked a lot with top sellers, people who were selling and creating their own businesses on eBay, and how could we support them with their education and growing their literacies to grow their business. And from there, I actually worked at the Skoll Foundation, where we help social entrepreneurs who are trying to solve big problems. And now I've ended up back at the University of California at Berkeley, where we look at things like how can we bring more people into the innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem, because it is so important to the future of work.
Yes. Everything. So your entire background, I think, makes you perfectly qualified to be having this conversation because looking at sort of how the landscape has changed, you worked in corporate, you worked in university, you work with entrepreneurs, so you've kind of seen all of these different sectors of, what it looks like to get a job and how that's changing over time. And so kind of as we jump into the conversation, I think one thing a lot of parents are worried about, one thing teachers are wondering about too, and administrators is what are the skills that you see as being most important to preparing students for the future of work? What things do they need to know or need to know how to do?
Absolutely. And there's a big shift going on, because with the advances in technology, vertical skills and deep skills are things that you have to continuously learn, because the things that you use today are not the tools that you're going to be used tomorrow. So what does that mean? What are employers looking for? What are recruiters looking for? They're looking for competencies like communication skills, collaboration skills. How well can you be a creative problem solver? What are your critical thinking skills? And these are skills that really need applied learning and agency to grow into, and practice. You need a lot of practice with these skills as well. And it turns out entrepreneurship really does teach these skills very well, whereas the standard curriculum may not give students as much opportunity to practice some of those skills.
Yes. And I think what you touched on with one, all the skills that you mentioned overlap beautifully with the conversation a lot of K-12 educators are having with 21st century learning. So that collaboration, the communication, all of these things, it sounds like are exactly what employers are looking for in their employees. And do you feel like, there's things that better or worse sort of build those skills for students right now?
So I think when we talk about building these skills, and these are really transferable skills, that's the other thing.
Hmm.
They'll apply in any job that you go forward in, whether you become an entrepreneur or work in a company. But the way to gain these skills is with applied learning. Having actual creation of things, being able to work with a team to problem solve, being able to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes. These are the ways that you really grow in these competencies.
And with you work directly with with students at Berkeley. Um, is that how do I ask this question? The reason I mention this is because a lot of the parents who are, wondering about what they should be doing with their students, oftentimes the goal is how do I get them into a top university? How do we get them to be able to go to schools like Berkeley with college getting more and more competitive? And so is there, Is that something that you're kind of seeing as a difference maker with the students that do end up at Berkeley?
I think there's a couple of things that students who get in have demonstrated, and that's they have
Mhm.
demonstrated initiative. They have demonstrated that they follow their passion and their interests, and they're willing to go deep and figure things out. So, what's really interesting about an entrepreneurial activity is it almost helps the students to build a portfolio, to get a story that they can really talk about, to show their learning and growth over the time that they're doing this and how they can adapt and take on new challenges and take on difficult challenges. And so when you think about applying to colleges, your essays, what are you going to talk about in your essays? When you think about interviews, what are the stories that you're going to tell? And they like to have real stories, specific stories, and they like to see authenticity. So are you talking about things that you truly care about? And are you trying to solve things that matter to you?
Right. And I think, a lot of the students like, well, I don't know what matters to me yet. And I wonder about sort of, I worry, and wonder is not even the best word. I worry about the degree to which, I feel like some students are being pushed to find something that they think the colleges will like. And so they lose this authenticity piece because they haven't really had the space to explore something that they're interested in. It's one of the things we talk about a lot with entrepreneurship and the the different innovation challenges that you run and you've seen students support. So when you kind of watch a student like take an idea and go from the beginning like you did with me, and then you see it kind of evolve into something else, sort of what kind of growth do you think takes place there when they get a chance to really sort of push forward with an idea?
Yeah, well, first, let me say I completely relate to that idea of I don't know what I care about. This is like a very common thing. In fact, when I was in high school, I didn't feel like I had an opinion until I
Mm,
took speech and debate. And when I took speech and debate, it made me argue both sides of an issue. And by arguing both sides, I both gained empathy, but I also realized I did have an opinion. I did have a perspective on this. And everybody's lived experience is so different that to learn that your opinion has value, to learn that your perspective can make a difference and inform, better and more innovative solutions is really key. So, what I have seen, and this is absolutely true, we run a
mhm.
challenge lab at Berkeley where we ask students to create a startup in 15 weeks, which is crazy if you know anything at all about starting a company. But we ask them to go from identifying a problem to building a prototype and pitching it. But here's the thing, to identify a problem is actually the hardest part of the whole thing because you start
Yeah.
out and say, well, I care about climate. Well, climate's really big. How are you going to approach solving the climate crisis? But if you can start to carve it in and be like, well, at my school, we don't have a recycling project that works very well, or we don't have enough education, I could do a workshop. So, what's great about entrepreneurship is it not only helps you understand a problem, break down that problem, but it helps you find gaps. And here's the thing I love about entrepreneurship mindset from Mindset and Milestones, the mindset of an entrepreneur or somebody who gets introduced to entrepreneurship is that when they see a gap, they see that as an opportunity and they see
Yeah.
that as a place where they can make a difference and make a change. So it's a really constructive mindset to think about when you encounter a gap or a problem, you think about it differently. You think about it as how might I help to solve this problem or how might I tackle a part of that problem. And so what I see with students who have been exposed to this type of learning is that they feel more agency. They to some extent
Mhm.
feel more urgency, like I need to do this. Nobody else is doing this. And they have more skills that allow them to tackle what is a very large and complicated problem and break it down into smaller things, then go out and talk to people and see if what they think is true or not by actually talking to people and learning about the customer. It teaches empathy. It teaches community understanding. So all of these things are really good for society as well.
Yes, I think that's a huge benefit to entrepreneurial learning, regardless of whether or not they end up building a company. Entrepreneurial thinking and entrepreneurial mindset allows us to raise students to be people who think that they can make a difference, right? Like I think there's been so much sort of hopelessness and like heaviness that we've all been feeling and like managing with the last several years of turmoil after turmoil. And the students aren't, are they're people, they're no different than us in that way. They see all of the things happening and they wonder about whether or not it's going to get better. And how powerful is it that there are tools, that there are opportunities to teach them, that they have what they need to try and make a difference, even if they start in a small place. Like at the end of the day, nobody can tackle all of anything and decide that they're going to be able to solve it by themselves. So this leads us really well into the last kind of major question I have for you. It's it's sort of big picture. What do you hope to see more of from middle and high school educators or even parents who want their students to be successful personally and professionally?
Well, I think something that both parents and teachers are facing is that the students are sometimes bored or frustrated or unengaged, right? Not engaged in their
Hmm.
learning and education because they don't see how it's relevant to their life and to their what they do. And so one of the nice things about using an entrepreneurial activity is it takes the context of math or history, social studies, science, and it puts it in a context where they can actually say, oh, this matters to me, or this is how it could improve something in my community, or, this could affect climate change, right? And so it gives them a chance to really think about things differently. So from a parent's perspective and from a teacher's perspective, this is a great way to kind of flip the table and let them be in the driver's seat of figuring out how can you use this math or science to do something. How can this inform a solution that you're working on? So it makes it much more relevant, it makes it more current, it makes it more fun, it makes it more
Yeah.
engaging. And so I think that that's really key. And the other big picture thing here I would say is that there's a great article about the lost Einsteins, and it talks
Mm.
about the fact that if we had women and people from minoritized backgrounds and people from low income backgrounds innovating at the same rate as men from wealthy backgrounds, we would 4x the amount of innovation in our country,
Wow.
which is incredible. Think about the job creation, think about the
Yep.
solutions that are being built. And that's the other thing I would say is entrepreneurs solve problems that they've encountered. And so if the
Hmm.
only people solving problems are people from a privileged background, then who's solving the problem from the people from less privileged backgrounds? So we really need to give these tools to all of our students so that they can all engage in innovation and entrepreneurship.
Right, because when we don't, everybody loses. We all miss out on the innovations that come from making sure that everybody's engaged and has the opportunity to share what it is that they think our world needs. Because let me tell you, we need a lot.
And
So,
and to
and
your point,
oh yeah.
even if you're not the innovator, if you're on the team, you can help inform
Hmm.
that whatever innovation or solutions being created works for everyone. So you get to be that voice in the room. So that's to your point, whether you become an entrepreneur or not, you can be an
Hmm.
entrepreneur. You can help guide, your company's products or services to make sure that they work well for everyone.
Right. There's so much movement to be had there if all students get the chance to develop those entrepreneurial skills, we get to a place where we have more entrepreneurial companies that solve more problems for more people. Everybody wins, kind of regardless of where the student ends up on an individual level. I love
And
it. This was so
personally,
much fun. Yes.
personally so much more satisfying, right? So
Yes.
as the individual, to be able to do something that you're passionate about, to make a difference in the world, this is something that's so important to the all generations, but especially this young generation. They want to have a positive impact on the world, and this gives them the toolkit to go out and do that.
Yes. And shows them that the things that they're learning in their classroom today, right now, are going to help and support them in making whatever change it is that they want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
Well, I think that's a great place to end it. Thank you so, so much for joining me and for sharing all of your wisdom and expertise. I appreciate you. I'm sure anyone who comes across this video is going to appreciate hearing all that you had to say. Thank you again so much, Jill, for your time.
Thanks for having me, and I'm excited to have more teachers take a look at Mindset and Milestones because it is such a helpful package of plug and play activities. You don't have to be a startup person yourself. You don't even have to be, involved in any sort of business to be able to use these to help your students to explore.
Thank you, and I will make sure that they have the link to that below so that they can go and check it out and see if entrepreneurship might be something that they want to try in their classroom.